Hey everyone, this is a clip from a recent episode of the Men of Steel podcast where we talk about Superman and Superman adjacent topics. If you enjoy this clip, check out the podcast. You can find it at certainpov.com or wherever you get your shows.
Look, let's start at the beginning of this because we want to talk about each issue because it's not the arc that we're talking about is effectively the first two issues of each of the books of Superman running, because that's the last point where we don't get into like the real return of Superman. And then we're also going to talk about the two annuals that take place during this time, which is the Man of Steel annual and the the Superman No Subtitle annual. And then next time the Action Comics and the Adventures of Superman annual. I keep wanting to call it Superboy.
Yeah, I do too. Yeah.
So the story opens with like multiple catch-ups of like, all right, here is this Superman getting on this. It's like little sneak previews for each of them. It was at the end, I believe, of the Superman 5 or Adventures of Superman 500. But we get quick snippets for each. So we get Steel like emerging from, I'm going to call him Steel because I can't help it. Because it's such a perfect name for him. John Henry Irons. We get him like emerging from a destroyed like construction site saying, "I gotta stop Doomsday," looking like a goddamn giant.
6'10".
Fucking right. While gang fighting is going on, we get a mugger who gets like zapped to all heavens by a Superman who has the cool visor look. We get the clone escaping and he says like, "Don't ever call me Superboy," which is a running theme for this whole thing. And then he takes it on pretty cool. Like he's pretty cool once he like actually goes for it. And then we get the vague Superman shows up to the plaque being like, "Here's where Superman fell," and then he burns it away and it's revealed that it's actually a cyborg version of Superman. Gasp. Shockingly, the one who looks the most evil is the one who's most evil in this.
Gasp.
And I don't have a lot to say about each of those. Probably the one that matters the most from a story standpoint. Well, Man of Steel sets up the gang warfare stuff that would become the major subplot of that arc. But it doesn't really go, like, you get caught up pretty well on it. The Adventures of Superman one has a lot of interesting stuff going on because they talk about how he's Project 13, or like that clone. But they talk about the implants. They start setting up the mystery of how they successfully cloned Superman here, and I think there's more actual worthwhile exposition, where some of the other ones are just like, here's a quick scene with our character. That one's much more like, like for example, so Superboy punches out this grate to escape, and as they're leaving, one of the teen Newsboy Legion is like, "Oh, fascinating. A blow should have dented that grate, but it seems to only be damaged by the impact of it hitting like the rock surface that it was knocked to." And what that is doing is it's setting up that Superboy actually is not super strong, that he has tactile telekinesis, and that anything he touches, he's able to manipulate with his telekinetic aura. And so he's not actually punching a thing so much as touching it and causing telekinetically it to be hurled away from him, which I think is a really cool detail. And it's really fun that they're setting it up all the way back here.
Yeah, it's also, I mean, let's look back at Cable again, right? Like that 90s, the thing, telekinesis and like using telekinesis for super strength and all of that. Also, these Newsboys in this first issue, is that a reference to the Kirby Newsboys?
Yes.
Okay, cool.
They are
Nice.
clones of the Kirby Newsboys.
Well, okay, that makes sense.
Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah,
They'd
so
be
at
newsmen
this point,
at this
the
point.
original Kirby Newsboys are the scientists at Cadmus, and they cloned themselves as a test project so that they could then successfully clone Guardian, which is why he's still alive.
I love it. I love that.
Yeah.
That's fantastic. Okay, cool. That's super helpful.
Yeah,
I was wondering about that.
These books love the Jack Kirby stuff. Like, they love it a lot. And then this is a good point to note that, so this is when Jerry Ordway has left The Adventures of Superman, and Carl Kiesel has come on as the writer. And now Kiesel and Grummett have gone on to do tons of stuff together as co-collaborators. And a lot of that has been very Kirby influenced. Like, they did a lot of very Kirby-heavy stuff when they did Superboy. And then they would go on to do lots of other books, such as Section Zero, which is like the biggest love letter to the Fantastic Four you can imagine, where it's like an Area 51 style Fantastic Four book. And it's a lot of fun.
I'm adding this to my to-read list now. That sounds fantastic. Is it like an Image comic or what?
I think it ultimately was published under Image. It was like a self-published, or it was like that Guerrilla Press or whatever that was like Mark Waid did. Empire, I think, was the name of the book.
Yeah.
Like, it was a bunch of small imprints that I think ultimately settled under Image, although may have been Dark Horse.
It is Image. God, this looks great. Okay, all right. Adding that to my to-read list for 2023. Thank you.
Remember, if you like the clip after you're done liking and subscribing, check out certainpov.com, where you can find more episodes of the show as well as a ton of other great shows.